In a world where survival often hinged on opportunity and connection, the story of mail-order brides reveals a harsh reality many women faced. For decades, thousands of women from impoverished backgrounds sought new lives through correspondence. With men living far away, often in frontier or rural areas, they sent letters, photos, and hopes across oceans and borders, dreaming of marriage and security. Yet, many were met not with open arms, but cold rejection, often because they were deemed too poor to be suitable partners. The concept of mail-order brides dates back to times when men outnumbered women in frontier towns, mining camps, or agricultural settlements. These men sought companionship and family but struggled to find eligible women nearby. Meanwhile, women trapped in poverty or social limitations saw marriage as a way out, a path to a better life. But it wasn't as simple as penning a letter and receiving a proposal. Economic status played a critical role. Men who could afford to sponsor a bride often preferred women who already had some financial means or dowry, fearing the added burden of supporting someone with nothing. Meanwhile, women who truly needed help, those who were too poor, found themselves repeatedly rejected. Their letters, filled with earnest pleas and dreams, often ended up ignored or discarded. One such woman was Eliza. Raised in a small village with limited opportunities, Eliza's family struggled to put food on the table. She had heard stories of mail-order marriages offering escape, hope, and a fresh start. Writing dozens of letters to men across the country, she described her skills as a seamstress and her desire to build a family. But time and again, she received no reply, or worse, curt refusals, citing her lack of wealth. Eliza's story was not unique. Across many regions, women like her faced the harsh judgment of economic standards that overshadowed their character, hopes, and resilience. Some were mocked for their simple clothing or humble backgrounds. Others were dismissed because they had no land, no dowry, and no social standing. The societal pressure was compounded by the men's expectations. Some men sought brides who could contribute financially or at least reduce their economic burden. Others wanted someone from a respectable background, often overlooking the potential for love or partnership in favor of status and security. Behind every rejected letter was a human story, a woman yearning to be seen as more than her bank balance, a woman ready to work hard and build a new life. But rejection after rejection chipped away at their hope. This painful cycle continued until a surprising change emerged in the form of two brothers, the Calders, known in their community for their open-mindedness and business acumen. The Calder brothers noticed the plight of these women and dared to challenge the prevailing norms. Instead of turning away the mail-order brides for being too poor, the Calder brothers welcomed them in. Their actions marked a shift from rejection to acceptance, from judgment to support. But this change was neither immediate nor easy. It involved challenging deep-rooted prejudices and taking bold risks. Before the Calders stepped in, many brides wandered from town to town, facing suspicion and loneliness. Some resorted to dangerous work or exploitative situations just to survive. Others lived in the shadows, their dreams deferred or shattered. The Calders' decision to take in these women was a beacon of hope. It created an opportunity for the brides to prove their worth beyond material wealth. Through their support, many women found jobs, shelter, and a sense of belonging they had never known. But what motivated the Calder brothers? How did two men decide to go against the grain and embrace those society shunned? And how did the brides themselves react to this new chance? These questions unravel the deeper story behind the headline. Mail-order brides were turned away for being too poor until the Calder brothers welcomed them in. As we explore their journey, we discover a powerful tale of resilience, compassion, and transformation, one that challenges assumptions and celebrates the strength of human connection beyond economic barriers. Long before the Calder brothers became known as champions for the rejected mail-order brides, they were just two men shaped by their own hardships, dreams, and values. Their story begins in a small rural town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, a place where community was everything, and survival often depended on how well you helped your neighbors. James and Samuel Calder grew up in a modest household. Their parents were hardworking farmers who struggled to keep the family afloat during tough seasons. From a young age, James, the elder brother, learned the importance of responsibility. Samuel, more adventurous and empathetic, often found himself drawn to the people around him, especially those who were overlooked or left behind. Life wasn't easy for the Calders. The family's farm produced just enough to survive, but never enough to thrive. Yet the brothers were determined to create Something better, not just for themselves, but for their community. They watched as neighbors moved away in search of opportunities, and they understood that to grow, they needed to think beyond the boundaries of their town. As they grew older, the brothers combined their strengths. James, practical and methodical, took charge of the family business, gradually turning it into a successful trading post that became the lifeline for their town's farmers and craftsmen. Samuel, compassionate and visionary, focused on building relationships with suppliers, with customers, and with those society often ignored. It was through Samuel's work that they first heard whispers about the plight of mail-order brides. Stories trickled in from travelers and traders, tales of women traveling alone, seeking husbands but being rejected simply because they were too poor. Many brides arrived with nothing but hope and the clothes on their backs, only to be turned away by men who wanted a financial advantage. The Calders saw this not just as an unfortunate circumstance, but as a deep injustice. Samuel, especially, couldn't reconcile how these women, who were willing to work hard and build new lives, were dismissed for their lack of wealth. He often spoke to James about the unfairness of a system that judged people solely on their material possessions. Their town was no stranger to prejudice and rigid social structures, but the brothers believed there was a better way. They dreamed of a community where character, effort, and mutual respect mattered more than money or status. A place where someone like Eliza, or any of the brides struggling to find acceptance, could be welcomed. The brothers' opportunity to act came sooner than expected, when a group of mail-order brides arrived at their town's trading post. Weary and uncertain, the Calders faced a choice: follow the common practice of turning them away or offer them support. Many townsfolk whispered that taking in poor brides would bring trouble, fear, or financial burden. But the Calders chose compassion. They opened their doors, offering shelter and work opportunities through their business network. James ensured that the brides could earn a living by contributing to the trading post, sewing, cooking, cleaning, or assisting customers. Samuel helped them navigate the social barriers, advocating for their dignity and potential. It wasn't an easy path. Some townspeople were openly hostile, refusing to do business with the Calders or spreading rumors. Others questioned the brothers' judgment, fearing it would damage their reputation. Yet the brothers remained steadfast, believing that supporting these women was not just charity, it was building the foundation for a stronger, more inclusive community. Through this process, the Calder brothers' character shone brightest. James's practical skills kept the business thriving, providing a stable base for their efforts. Samuel's empathy and advocacy forged connections that slowly broke down barriers. Together, they showed that leadership wasn't about wealth or status, but about courage and kindness. The story of the Calder brothers spread beyond their town, inspiring others to reconsider how they treated mail-order brides and marginalized groups. Their actions sparked conversations about fairness, opportunity, and the true meaning of community. But the real measure of their impact would come not from the business success or social approval, but from the lives they touched. The brides, who found hope, safety, and a new beginning under their care. In the next chapter, we'll see how the initial encounters between the Calder brothers and the brides unfolded, moments filled with uncertainty, hope, and the first steps toward something truly transformative. The day the mail-order brides arrived in the town was overcast, with gray skies casting a muted light on the dusty streets. They came in a small, tired group, their faces marked by exhaustion and uncertainty. Some clutched worn suitcases. Others carried nothing but hope and a few precious belongings. For many, this town was the first stop in a journey that had been both long and lonely. When the Calder brothers first saw them, a mixture of emotions stirred within James and Samuel. They had heard the stories, yes, but seeing the women face made the situation real in a way that no rumor could. These were not strangers or mere names on paper. They were human beings, each carrying her own dreams, fears, and determination. The townspeople gathered nearby, some curious, others skeptical. Whispers floated on the air. Some women were too poor, some too foreign, others not respectable enough. The cold judgment was palpable. The usual protocol was clear. The brides would be vetted, and many would be turned away if they didn't meet the unspoken financial or social criteria. James exchanged a look with Samuel, who nodded quietly. The brothers had talked about this moment many times, but now it was here, and the stakes felt higher than ever. They stepped forward together, breaking through the crowd's murmurs. "We'll take care of them," Samuel said firmly, his voice steady despite the tension. "No one will be turned away because of poverty." The murmurs grew louder. Some voices raised in protest. "You don't know what you're doing, Calder." One man spat. "They'll be a burden on us all." James responded with calm resolve. "They're willing to work. We'll help them build their lives, just as we've built ours." The decision sent ripples through the town. Some admired their courage, while others bristled at what they saw as reckless charity. But for the brides, it was a lifeline. Among the group was Anna, a young woman who had lost her family and had nowhere else to turn. She had traveled hundreds of miles, fueled by hope and the promise of a new life. When Samuel approached her, offering food and shelter, she hesitated. Years of rejection had taught her to be wary of kindness. Yet, something in his eyes told her this time might be different. As days passed, the Calder brothers worked tirelessly to integrate the brides into the community. They found jobs for them at the trading post, where their skills as seamstresses, cooks, and caretakers were invaluable. The brides began to find a rhythm, their confidence growing with each passing day. Yet the journey was far from smooth. Some townsfolk resisted, refusing to trade or speak with the brides. Rumors circulated that the women were troublemakers or liabilities. The brothers faced mounting pressure to reverse their decision. But the brides themselves proved their worth. Beyond doubt, Anna, with her gentle spirit and relentless work ethic, became a beloved member of the trading post's staff. Eliza, who had once feared rejection, now crafted beautiful garments that caught the eye of customers near and far. Each success was a quiet rebellion against the prejudices that had kept them sidelined for so long. Through it all, the Calders stood by them, not as saviors, but as allies. They understood that true change required patience, courage, and unwavering support. That first meeting marked a turning point not only for the brides but for the town itself. It challenged old assumptions and opened the door for a future where character mattered more than wealth, where hope could flourish despite hardship. In the next part, we'll explore how trust and acceptance grew between the Calder brothers, the brides, and the community, and how that foundation helped reshape lives. The arrival of the mail-order brides, welcomed by the Calder brothers, marked the beginning of a slow and often difficult transformation, not just for the women, but for the entire town. The initial steps of acceptance were tentative, and the path forward was riddled with challenges that tested everyone's resolve in a community bound by tradition and wary of outsiders. The presence of these women, many without money, family, or status, stirred unease. Skepticism lingered like a shadow over the streets, whispered conversations questioning the wisdom of the Calder's decision. What if this brings ruin? Some worried. Can they truly contribute? But James and Samuel Calder believed deeply in the power of human dignity and hard work. They knew that trust couldn't be demanded, it had to be earned. And so, the brothers committed themselves to bridging the gap between the brides and the townspeople, creating opportunities for connection, collaboration, and understanding. One of the first moves was to encourage the brides to participate actively in town life. They attended church services, community gatherings, and markets, slowly weaving themselves into the social fabric. Samuel personally introduced each woman to neighbors and leaders, vouching for their character and potential. This hands-on approach helped dispel rumors and soften hardened hearts. Anna, once a timid newcomer, took a leadership role among the brides. Her warmth and resilience inspired others to engage openly, fostering friendships across class and cultural lines. Eliza, with her sewing talents, began crafting garments not only for the trading post but for local families, turning her skills into a bridge of goodwill. The Calder brothers also worked tirelessly behind the scenes to secure fair wages and safe working conditions for the brides. James negotiated with suppliers and business owners, ensuring that no one could exploit or dismiss the women simply because of their origins. This advocacy sent a powerful message. The brides were valuable members of the community. Despite progress, resistance remained. Some townsfolk organized protests, demanding the women leave or be kept out of public spaces. The brothers faced threats to their business and personal safety. Yet, with steadfast commitment, they refused to back down. They understood that changing minds required not just words but consistent action and visible results. The turning tide came when the brides began contributing visibly to the town's prosperity. The garments Eliza and others crafted attracted customers from neighboring areas. The food prepared by the women at local events won praise and gratitude. The community started to see the brides not as liabilities but as assets. Small acts of kindness helped, too. When a local family faced hardship, the brides organized a fundraiser, raising both money and spirits. When children needed care, the women volunteered their time, earning the trust and affection of parents. Over time, personal connections blossomed, breaking down barriers one relationship at a time. Samuel often reflected on how the town's transformation mirrored the journeys of the brides themselves, from outsiders to integral members of the community. He recognized that acceptance was not a destination, but an ongoing process that demanded empathy and resilience. For the brides, this newfound acceptance brought more than just social approval. It rekindled their hopes and ambitions, empowering them to envision futures they had once thought impossible. Many began learning new skills, pursuing education, or starting small businesses with the support of the Calder brothers. This gradual but profound shift challenged the rigid class and economic divisions that had defined the town for generations. It showed that worth could not be measured by wealth alone, and that communities thrive when they embrace diversity and compassion. The story of the Calder brothers and the mail-order brides became a beacon, inspiring others to reconsider their own prejudices and open their hearts to those in need. But the journey was far from over. In the next part, we will see how the brides, supported by the Calders, began creating new homes and lives, transforming not only themselves but the entire community around them. Building trust was only the beginning. For the mail-order brides welcomed by the Calder brothers, the true challenge was creating a new life, a home where they could not only survive but thrive. It was a process of transformation, one that required patience, resilience, and the unwavering support of a community willing to grow alongside them. The Calders understood this deeply. They knew that acceptance without stability would leave the brides vulnerable to hardship and heartbreak, so they dedicated resources, time, and energy to helping the women establish homes safe, warm, and filled with possibility. At first, the options were limited. The town had no ready-made housing for newcomers, especially those without wealth or connections. The Calders stepped in, converting a series of old barns and unused buildings into shared living spaces. These modest but clean homes became a sanctuary, places where the brides could gather, support one another, and begin to heal from the uncertainty of their journeys. Inside those walls, friendships blossomed. Women who had traveled alone, often feeling isolated and forgotten, now found community. They shared stories, taught each other's skills, and celebrated small victories. Anna, with her natural leadership, organized gatherings and practical workshops, sewing circles, cooking lessons, even literacy classes that helped the brides build confidence and independence. Work was a vital piece of this new life. The Calders expanded their trading posts operations, creating jobs that matched the brides' skills and aspirations. Some found satisfaction in crafting clothing, others in tending gardens or helping in the kitchen. Many took pride in roles that allowed them to contribute financially, slowly shedding the stigma of being poor brides and proving their value beyond social labels. The broader town began to see the tangible benefits. The local economy was infused with new energy, new crafts, and new customers. The trading post thrived as more people came to buy the women's handmade goods. The town's markets grew livelier and more diverse. Slowly, the bride's presence became not just accepted but welcomed. Yet the most profound changes were personal. Eliza, once timid and uncertain, used her earnings to save for a small parcel of land on the outskirts of town. There, with help from the Calders and neighbors, she planted a garden and built a simple cottage. It was more than a house, it was proof of a future she had dared to imagine. Anna found joy in teaching others, eventually opening a small school for children whose families had little access to education. Her dream of nurturing a new generation was finally taking root. Each bride, in her own way, was writing a new chapter, one filled with hope, dignity, and independence. The Calder brothers watched these transformations with pride. They had taken a risk by welcoming the brides, but the rewards far exceeded their expectations. The women had become pillars of the community, their resilience and spirit inspiring all who knew them. Of course, not everything was perfect. Homes could not shield the brides from all hardships. They faced health issues, loneliness from families left behind, and the ongoing challenge of navigating a new culture. But with the Calder brothers' continued support and the strength of their newfound community, they faced these struggles together. This process of creating new homes was not just about physical shelter, but about belonging, about carving out spaces where the brides were no longer defined by poverty or rejection but by their contributions, friendships, and dreams. The story of these women and the Calder brothers reminds us that home is more than a place. It is a feeling of safety, acceptance, and possibility. It is built with hands willing to work and hearts willing to open. In the next part, we will explore the obstacles that threatened this fragile progress, challenges that tested the community's commitment and the resilience of the Brides and the Calder brothers. Just as the community began to flourish with the arrival and integration of the mail-order brides, new challenges arose. Tests that threatened to unravel the fragile progress the Calder brothers and the women had fought so hard to achieve. At first, the obstacles seemed small, whispers turning into rumors, neighbors eyeing the brides with suspicion, and the occasional heated confrontation. But soon, deeper, more entrenched problems surfaced, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths. One significant hurdle was the backlash from rival towns and neighboring communities. Some viewed the Calder brothers' welcoming of the brides as a dangerous precedent, fearing it would encourage an influx of outsiders and upset economic balances. These towns spread false stories that the brides were dishonest, lazy, or even criminals, hoping to isolate the Calder brothers' community and dissuade others from following their example. These external pressures filtered into the town itself. Local leaders and businessmen, feeling threatened by the Calders' growing influence, began pushing back. They argued that the brides were a financial burden and that the brothers were risking the town's reputation for personal gain. Facing this opposition, the Calder brothers leaned into their core beliefs. James used his business savvy to build stronger economic ties with trustworthy partners beyond the town's borders, ensuring their trading post could withstand boycotts or rumors. Samuel intensified his advocacy, organizing meetings and speaking publicly about the bride's contributions and the values of inclusion and fairness. Within the town, not all opposition was external. Some residents struggled to accept the changing social dynamics. Old prejudices died hard, and some townsfolk resented the bride's growing roles in the community. There were instances of vandalism to the bride's homes and businesses, as well as whispered threats aimed at the Calders and their allies. The brothers responded with resilience and grace. Rather than retaliate, they sought to educate and engage, hosting community forums, inviting residents to meet the brides, and encouraging open dialogue. They highlighted stories of the women's hard work and kindness, slowly chipping away at fear and suspicion. Legal hurdles also presented themselves. Bureaucratic red tape complicated the bride's ability to own property, gain citizenship, or access public services. Some officials, biased against the brides, delayed or denied paperwork. Navigating these challenges required patience, legal knowledge, and sometimes outside help. Recognizing this, the Calder brothers enlisted the support of sympathetic lawyers and advocates. They helped the brides understand their rights and pushed for changes in local policies to protect newcomers from discrimination. These efforts were slow but crucial, setting precedents that would benefit future arrivals. Perhaps the most profound challenge, however, came from within the brides themselves. Adjusting to new lives in an unfamiliar place was emotionally taxing. Memories of past hardships, feelings of isolation, and the weight of expectations sometimes led to despair. To support each other, the brides formed close-knit circles, offering emotional support and sharing coping strategies. The Calders encouraged this community spirit, organizing gatherings, counseling sessions, and celebrations that reinforced belonging and hope. Through every trial, the bonds between the Calder brothers and the brides strengthened. Their shared vision and mutual respect created a foundation that could weather storms. Together, they proved that obstacles, no matter how daunting, could be overcome with solidarity, courage, and compassion. This chapter of struggle and perseverance was pivotal. It not only tested the community's commitment, but deepened its character, teaching lessons about resilience, justice, and the transformative power of acceptance. In the final part, we'll look back on the lasting legacy of the Calder brothers, work how their bold choice changed lives and communities for generations to come. The story of the Calder brothers and the mail-order brides is more than a tale of charity or charity's risks. It is a testament to the power of compassion to rewrite the narratives of those deemed too poor or unworthy. It is a legacy that continues to inspire communities to this day. Years after the initial arrivals, the town had transformed dramatically. What once was a place of suspicion and exclusion had become a vibrant, welcoming community. The brides were no longer seen as outsiders or liabilities but as essential members who enriched the town with their labor, culture, and spirit. Many of the women had married, yes, but their value extended far beyond marital status. They became entrepreneurs, teachers, leaders, and advocates. The homes they built, the businesses they started, and the relationships they nurtured laid the foundation for a more inclusive and resilient town. The Calder brothers' willingness to see beyond wealth and status opened doors not just for these women but for future generations. Their example challenged entrenched social norms and redefined what it meant to be a community. Their trading post, once a modest family business, evolved into a regional hub, a symbol of opportunity and fairness. It stood as a daily reminder that success is not measured solely by money, but by the dignity and respect we afford one another. The community's growth also spurred changes in local laws and policies. Thanks to advocacy efforts sparked by the Calders and the Brides, protections were established for newcomers, and barriers to property ownership and citizenship were reduced. These reforms paved the way for others seeking new lives, breaking cycles of poverty and exclusion. Perhaps the most profound legacy is the change in hearts and minds. Prejudice gave way to empathy. Fear turned into friendship. The town that once shunned the poor brides now celebrated them. The brides themselves carried this legacy forward. They shared their stories, teaching their children and neighbors about resilience, courage, and the importance of welcoming those in need. Their experiences became woven into the fabric of the town's history, a source of pride and inspiration. The Calder brothers never sought fame or recognition. For them, the real reward was seeing lives transformed and communities strengthened. Their courage to act differently, to embrace those society rejected, changed the course of countless lives. In today's world, where divisions still run deep and barriers persist, the Calder story reminds us of the power we hold when we choose compassion over judgment. It challenges us to look beyond appearances and possessions, to value the human spirit above all else. Their story is a call to action, to open doors, to extend hands, and to build communities where everyone has the chance to belong and flourish. In the end, the rejected brides who were once deemed too poor found not just acceptance, but a home, a family, and a future. And thanks to the Calder brothers, their stories were rewritten from tales of rejection to legacies of hope.